Hey, Fitheads, welcome to another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. This is Sharing Our Pairings, episode 64, Spotlight on Drew Estate. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon. We are broadcast around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and we're rebroadcast on Cigar Federation, Podcast, Podbean, YouTube. We are heard around the world in 58 different countries. I know because I checked this weekend, which is kind of cool. And we're going to do some cool Drew Estate pairings tonight with some beers. I'm joined, as always, with my co-host, Robbie Rass. Rob, how you doing toasting over there in California, brother?
Seriously, man, the sun came out today. It's been got up to about 90 degrees, and like, what the hell? We went from nice 70s and a little rain here and there to just straight up hot. But it's supposed to rain again, I think, on Friday. So, but no, things are good, man. We've got some smoking a UF13 that's been sitting in my humidor for about a year, I guess. So it's nice and smooth right now.
It is Goat Week.
Oh
yeah, it is. It is on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is that right? I don't know what that is.
So
greatest of all time.
Well, I know that.
Greatest of all so every year on a member of Cigar Federation, his birthday falls this week.
Okay.
Yeah, he started the tradition of Goat, which really, and well, we'll introduce Johnny. He's just sitting there, but we'll introduce our special guest here in a moment. But On does this smoke, your rare and greatest of all time cigars. Don't let them sit in your humidor. And this is the week to burn them. So, of course, that's why I'm lighting up my L40 because I loves them.
So we were playing along, and I didn't even know.
Yeah. But, of course, we do have a special guest. You can see that third window. Johnny Brooke from Drew Estate. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, what's up, guys? Glad to be here. It's not quite as warm here as it is in California, but
I see that puffy jacket.
You're bundled up, man.
Yeah, I feel like I look kind of ridiculous, but it's necessary. It has to happen. So it's gonna be good.
You got to tune into some of the episodes when you see the snowflakes flying by.
I've seen him. I've seen him. His Liga reviews in the snowdrift. I mean, that dude's dedicated. I'm not that dedicated, and I work for a cigar company,
So I'm going with the UF13. John's got the L40. What are you smoking?
I'm smoking the classic Ratzilla. I guess that's not good. Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I just love this size. I'm a big Dirty Rat guy. Dirty Rat's probably one of my favorite of the Liga line. Probably my favorite of all the cigars we make, actually. And the Ratzilla, I feel like, is just kind of a longer version of that, so it's good for this kind of session where we're going to be chatting and bullshitting for a while.
Perfect.
Oh, and that leads me into my next point, which I didn't prompt you on before the show, because, of course, this is on our Armed Forces Radio Network. We have to keep it clean for the 58 minutes. But that's okay, because I'm pretty much a pro at this point at post-processing from Cigar Chat and Logan's filthy mouth.
I can handle that.
Quick question for you, Brooke. Is that a Connecticut broadleaf in the Ratzilla, or is that still the stock cut Habano?
That's a good question. I should probably know that.
I had to look up the L40. I couldn't remember this. I love the cigar, and I couldn't even remember the specs. So I'll talk about
the Unico
L40.
started to get a little complex. There's so many little adjustments here and there that are made that it's kind of hard to keep them all straight sometimes. Let's see if I can find that. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, well, you do that. I'm going to do my classic filler, which Rob usually does for me when he asks me a question, and I am not prepared for it, but I am smoking the L40, which is one of my favorite of all time. It does use a Connecticut stock cut Habano, which has that really nice, thick spiciness to it, but what I really love about it is the binder. It's got the Brazilian Matafina binder. For me, it brings through this great sweetness, lots of raisin, and I just love it. I think you can typically MSRP on those are $12.95 if you can find them anywhere. That's really the trick, and they come in boxes of 15.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that.
Yes, so the Ratzilla is stock cut Habano as well, so
nice.
I should definitely know that. But because you get a lot of, to me, the Habano gives a lot of that kind of just peppery spiciness and adds a lot of complexity to the blend. I mean, I love number 9s and the regular broadleaf, but that stock cut Habano is a whole nother level of deliciousness.
Absolutely.
So I'm the only one going with the, like I said, I'm going with the UF13, which I guess is the UF13 dark because there are two different UF13s. This one's got the Connecticut broadleaf dark mediums wrapper on it. So to me, it's a little bit, it's a bit sweeter than what you guys are working with. At least
Definitely.
That's been my experience. It's got a lot more of that chocolate in there, which I feel like is going to go really, really well with my beers. I'm excited about my beers today.
Dude, your beer lineup is impressive. Those are some of my favorite stouts that you got there. That bomb from Prairie is just ridiculous. I know I was pounding those at the trade show this year at Avenue Pub down there in New Orleans.
Yeah, that's where we
Avenue Pub. There we go.
We met up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they had it on draft there for like the whole week. The Prairie Bomb.
That was I think that was before my foray into super dark beers. I think because I don't think we were drinking it then. Did we drink it that night?
I was
I don't know.
for sure.
I was there every night, so it's hard to keep track of which. I literally was there every night. So
that was a pretty cool spot, man. They had what, like 50, 60, 70, 80 taps, something like that.
Yeah, it's New Orleans is an interesting place. It can be a lot of fun, but when you're just trying to relax and kind of not go do the whole Bourbon Street thing, I think Avenue Pub is really it's the place to go because they have that huge balcony area, both upstairs and out back, and they got really solid food and just a ton of really good beer. So it's definitely my jam. I mean, my first IPCBR ever was in New Orleans, and that's when I first found that place. And I did the same thing back then. And, it's open 24 hours a day too. So, depending on how stupid you want to be and how rough the next day you want it to be, you can really go crazy. So
who doesn't love a good breakfast stout now and again?
Yeah.
Oh, girl, I do.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I went with some classics as far as the show is concerned. I'm pretty sure we've featured all of these at one time or another. At the very least, we've talked about them. So we'll get into that as we go along. But I do feel like this. I was going to go with the Feral Flying Pig, but at the last minute I decided to go with the UF13 Dark. So I hope that pairing works out. I hope it's just not too sweet all around, but we'll see.
I think you'll be all right.
So do we want to get into an audience question first, Rob, or do we want to kick off our first pairing here? What are your thoughts?
It's your show, man. I haven't looked at the audience questions yet.
We got a lot.
Let's take go ahead and take one.
All right. Well, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions for Brooke, but first at the top here we got Bob Dog. Bob Dog, thanks for your question. He says, "What's your favorite Drew Estate pairing? What cigar with what beverage?" I'm going to tune in to that question right away because we did a KFC pairing with I did the KFC pig and we did IPAs, which was probably the most underrated pairing going into the show and ended up being probably one of our top 3 or 4 pairings for the year.
Really?
Yeah, we went into it just trying to mess around. We're like, we really couldn't find a cigar that paired brilliantly with IPA. We did the Smoking Monk series and that was really good. And I'm losing my flag here. Did the Smoking Monk series, which was really good, but the KFC that Kentucky Fire Cured, I tell you what, that was outstanding.
Huh. We've done a bunch of pairings on our pairing video series, but I don't think we've ever done an IPA with the Kentucky Fire Cured. That's I'm gonna have to try that. That sounds awesome.
It actually worked out pretty well. That that little bit of saltiness that you're getting from the Kentucky Fire Cured leaf there goes. And I don't know, it just worked. It worked well. It brought like a brightness to it.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, obviously an IPA and a barbecue sandwich is pretty awesome. So,
there you go.
You have to imagine that Kentucky Fire Cured would work in that situation.
I think for me, and I'm gonna bend the definition of Drew Estate here a little bit, and I'm gonna go with the Hoya Cuatro Cinco.
Oh yeah.
And we've done 2 shows on that, and I think I've paired it with 6 different things, 3 beers and 3. What else did we do with it? Whiskeys, and every single pairing was good.
Very versatile.
Yeah,
that's a great cigar, man. It's so balanced. It's just it does not crush your palate in anything. It's not overly sweet. It's not overly spicy. It's just so balanced. It can pair with a lot of stuff. Yeah, for
absolutely. Sure. And I think that's for me. That's the one that the first one that popped into my head when John read the question. I mean, we've done 2 shows, and even at the end of the second show, we were talking about what are we going to do with the 3.0 show, because what else can we try to pair this with? It just seemed to work well with everything. So that would be me. What about you, Brooke?
So one of my favorite all-time pairings that we've done is just your classic number 9 with an oak-aged Imperial Yeti from Great Divide. I think that beer and that cigar go so well together because, you know, again, that broadleaf, you get kind of that creamy chocolate, cocoa, you know, earthy kind of quality from it, and then, you know, you have an oak-aged Imperial Stout. Obviously, you get a ton of, you know, sweetness and chocolate and all that kind of stuff. That is a absolutely delicious pairing. If you've never tried it, I would highly recommend it.
Nice. Just a reminder to audience, you're tuned into Sharing Our Pairings, episode 64, Spotlight on Drew Estate. We're joined by our special guest, Johnny Brooke from Drew Estate. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon, joined as always by my co-host, Robbie Rass. Thanks very much for all our Armed Forces Radio Network listeners tuned in wherever you are in the world. Maybe you have a chance to smoke a cigar. We certainly do hope that you do. So we're talking about pairings. We're answering some questions. I'm going to hop into my first pairing because I've really been drinking it for about 30 minutes now. No cheating.
Yeah, I was going to wonder, like, are we already drinking our beers? I haven't even opened mine yet.
Oh, well, this is
behind the curve.
This is your opportunity. We are, of course, professional pairers, so, you know, we're juggling the pairings in the background here. I'm going with something, and it's interesting to me that I didn't get a lot of comments on this one. I got a lot of comments on my other beer. This is a Kelp Stout. Yes, it does actually have kelp in it. This is from Tofino Brewing, and Tofino Brewing Company is located in Tofino. Makes sense. British Columbia, Alberta? No, British Columbia, Canada. British Columbia, of course, on the west coast of Canada. They opened in April of 2011 by Brian O'Malley, Chris Newfield, and Dave McConnell. And not a lot of information on their website about this beer, which, you know, we always talk about. It's kind of a drag, but I've had it before, which is why I own it. It's 6% ABV, and I dig it. And I'm going to hold up the glass here, give you a sense. Obviously, our audio listeners will not know.
They're not going to benefit from that.
They're not going to benefit. But you can see it's got a, you know, even at 6%, it's got that nice dark stout quality. Maybe it's not quite as syrupy as something that's 9.5%, but it's nice and dark. You can see I upgraded my glasses because I had glass jealousy going on from Robbie's stout.
Upgrade your glassware, absolutely.
Okay. What do you got?
First off, and honestly, I don't know. I think did you pair with the Death by Coconut? I know we've talked about it a lot.
I sure did.
Oh, that's such a good beer.
So,
this is my favorite beer right now. I can't stop drinking it. It's from Oskar Blues in Colorado, and they actually have a second brewery, like you were saying, in North Carolina, correct?
Yeah, about 45 minutes from my house. I've been to the brewery. So
awesome.
Yeah, they're opening a third one in Austin over the summer as well.
Oh wow. Yeah, and they just bought Cigar City Brewing as well.
Yeah,
from what I understand.
Yeah, I think the company that partially owns them bought them, or so. Yeah, somehow they're connected now.
Yeah, something to that effect, but who knows? Oskar Blues, you know, we probably talked about it. They've been around. It looks like since 2002. Started in Colorado. They had a little brew pub there, and the first thing they did was a Dale's Pale Ale in the cans. They do everything in cans, which I think is pretty cool. Let's see. They've got.
So, quick little anecdote that I learned. So, the way they got into canning. So, you know, they had the little brew pub in Lyons, Colorado, and they got. I guess back in the day, when you had a fax machine, you would get spam over your fax machine. Mm-hmm. So they just randomly got a spam message from a Canadian company, actually, for a home canning system. And so you would fill 4 cans, and by hand, you would somehow seal them all 4 at once. And that was how they started canning their beers. And they kind of started the whole craft canning thing. And, you know, I think Colorado obviously was super fitting because cans just make sense for active stuff. You know, they don't break as easily, obviously. And, yeah, I thought that was kind of funny.
Wow, I totally want one of those home canning things. We were talking about.
Yeah, I was looking it up, and I cannot find it.
How come I don't get cool spam like that?
Dude, I know. I would love to can my own homebrew.
They just asked me if I want Cialis and Viagra. Nobody asked me if I want to can my own beer. So yeah, going with the Oskar Blues Death by Coconut. It's an Irish porter, 6.5% alcohol by volume, 25 IBUs. It's a fantastic beer in my opinion. It's not too heavy. It's, you know, like I said, 6.5%. So you could probably throw back a couple of these and not really, you know, start acting a fool just yet.
Easy sessionable.
It's pretty dark. Nice little head on it, but I mean, it's more of a. It's not a complete black. It's more of like a deep reddish brown. And I just love it, man. I can't stop drinking it. It's got that nice coconut up front, and I really don't even like coconut. It's funny. My wife, when I brought this home, she said, "Why did you buy that? You hate coconut." And I really kind of do, but this reminds me of those Girl Scout cookies, the Samoas.
Oh man, yeah.
With the caramel and the
Those
coconut.
are the best.
Yeah, that's what it reminds me of. So that's why I love it. But anyway, so that's my first beer. What are you going with, Brooke?
So I try to stick with some local North Carolina stuff. So this is Wicked Weed Brewing. They're probably one of the bigger here in Asheville. This is their Napoleon complex, and it's a hoppy pale ale. So I kind of went, a little funky with it. But to me, I've started to realize that hoppy beers that are not super bitter can play well with some darker cigars. I think, you get a lot of that citrus and, some of the grapefruit notes and that kind of stuff, some of the tropical fruits. And it can pair really well, I think, with the kind of chocolatey earthiness. It's almost like, the chocolate-covered orange peel that you get.
Yeah.
That it's that kind of thing going on, So as long as it's not too much bitterness, which I think, obviously I love a bitter IPA, but I think it can kind of clash with the bitterness of the cigar sometimes. So, it's a real good one. This one's only like 5.2%, and it's a real sessionable little pale ale. It's delicious.
So while everyone gets a chance to taste their pairing, I'm going to talk about my pairing here because I have been smoking and sipping for about 30 minutes, so I think I've got a pretty good sense of how it's going, and it's going fantastic. The Kelp has this great amount of salt to it. It's, exactly what you would expect out of Kelp, but with this nice malty stout character to round it out. So the Kelp doesn't really take over, but it's doing wonders for this cigar because the salt just is superpowering my palate here. I'm getting lots of cedar, I'm getting lots of spices, I'm getting that raisin, sort of stewed raisin that I typically get out of an L40. This is a no-brainer pairing. This is working out actually way better than I could have ever anticipated. And then for that, I'm going to throw that back over to Rob, who is no doubt enjoying the bliss that is Death by Coconut.
Well, I was a little bit afraid this was going to happen. And so...
Say it ain't so, Coach.
I'm getting... You get that coconut up front, but that's really all that I'm getting out of it. After that, it's just kind of... Blech, just blah. Not yuck, but blah. There's those chocolate notes that were in there, and that any kind of depth of flavor from the beer is really getting run over by the cigar. I feel like that coconut blast at the beginning goes well with the flavors from the cigar, but the beer is almost left with almost like a bitter, like a metallic finish in my mouth now because of this pairing, and it's a little bit of a disappointment, but I was a little bit afraid that was going to happen. I'm going to stop sipping on it and save that for later because I know I am going to enjoy that later. But the pairing so far, not working.
Do you think that's the broadleaf that's killing it?
You may be right. It's if something spicier would be better with this. I think had I gone with the Pharaoh Flying Pig, I think that would have been a much better pairing to start with here. This UF13 is super smooth. I mean, this one's got, like I said, it's got at least a year on it. So that spice isn't really there as prominently as it was when you first fire these things up. It's still there on the retrohale, but it's not quite as prominent. So the main characteristics I'm getting out of this cigar, a little bit of earthiness, but I'm mainly getting those sweet notes, some chocolate, and kind of that raisiny note, John, that you were actually talking about. So to throw more chocolate at it, I don't know if that really was the right way to go. So I'm a little bit disappointed, but I'm looking forward to my next pairing, so we'll see.
All right, Brooke, over to you. You want to talk about your first pairing, how it's going?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. Again, IPAs or pale ales, hoppy beers can kind of be tricky, and this one's a little lighter. I'd actually never had it before, so while it's refreshing and you get some of the hop character up front, it doesn't really have the body to stand up to this cigar. Wow. The Radzilla it's got some real spice to it, and this, I actually don't know how old this is. I mean, I've got stuff in my humidor that's super old, so I have no way of knowing how old this is, but it's still packing quite a bit of spice and you know, a lot of that earthy character, and it's good. I mean, I think I'm excited to switch to the stout that I have, because I think that's going to definitely be much more of a good match with this cigar.
All right, well, before we get into our second pairing here, we've got more audience questions, and at the top of that list is Jeff Madre, who is a fellow North Carolina resident, and this is really directed to you, Brooke. He wants to know, and I think he kind of touched on this a little bit, but he wants to know, what are the top 3 breweries that you recommend someone visit when they go to the Asheville area?
Oh, that's easy. So, I mean, there's obviously some real big breweries here. You know, Oskar Blues, as I said, has a location here. Sierra Nevada has a location here, and then New Belgium's opening one in May. But to me, you can get their beers everywhere. There's nothing really special that they have at any of their tap rooms here. So I would go more the local route. So to me, number 1 is either going to be Wicked Weed or Burial Brewing. Both are outstanding. So Burial has this beer called Skillet Donut Stout, and it's a imperial coffee milk stout, and brewed with Counterculture Coffee, which is a awesome roaster out of Durham, North Carolina, and it is delicious. It's sweet, you know, from the lactose added to the milk stout, and it's got tons of coffee flavor. It pairs phenomenally with a cigar. If you can find it, it's awesome. Wicked Weed makes some awesome stuff as well. They really, I think, specialize in IPAs and Imperial IPAs. Their big one is the Freak of Nature double IPA, but they also have a really extensive souring program, which I'm a huge sour beer guy. So they have a second bar in Asheville called the Funkatorium, and it's all sour beers, all funky Brett stuff, and, you know, lactobacillus, you know, barrel aged stuff. So outstanding stuff. So number 3, I don't even know. Those 2 are so good. I guess number 3 nowadays, there's a new brewery about 10 minutes from my house in Weaverville, which is kind of in between Asheville and where I live, and they're doing awesome stuff. They just opened about a month and a half ago, and the head guy there is named Mike. He used to be the experimental brewer, the head of experimental brewing at Green Man, another big Asheville brewery. And so he really knows what he's doing. And I probably maybe should have pulled out one of the beers I got from them. They did a smoked stout, which was outstanding. It would have kind of gone, I think, well with the Kentucky Fire Cure, but it might have been almost too much smokiness. So I don't know. But anyway, Zebulon's awesome. You know, you can find their stuff at bottle shops here in Nashville. But Asheville's got like 20-something breweries, so it's kind of hard to narrow it down. So you could spend, you know, a week here drinking every day and not run out. So there's a lot to choose from.
I don't know, Rob. Sounds to me like Sharing Our Pairings needs to hit the road. What do you think?
Yep.
You guys are welcome anytime, man. I got plenty of space, so we could do one for sure.
Yeah, awesome. The road episode. I'm down. 20 breweries in Asheville alone.
Something like that, yeah. I mean, there's, you know, the three big ones I named, and yeah, I think in the Asheville area, you know, including like Black Mountain and like the, you know, 40-minute radius of Asheville, it's like 20-something breweries, so it's pretty nuts.
Now, is Asheville considered a big city? I really have no idea.
No, it's like 80,000 people. It's
wow.
Very small. Yeah, very small.
So
I don't really.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of beer per capita.
Absolutely.
Which is awesome to me, because you can go and go to breweries and not have to contend with, you know, a ton of crowds. So it's awesome. It's a good place. It's a good place to be.
Just a reminder to our audience that you're tuned into Sharing Our Pairings, episode 64, Spotlight on Drew Estate. We're joined by our guest, Johnny Brooke from Drew Estate. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon, joined, as always, by my co-host, Robbie Rass. And we're talking about some beer pairings. So I'm going to move into my second pairing, which I got a lot of comments on. I want Funkalicious. Funkalicious being the Black Sam Licorice Stout. Now, licorice is kind of one of those things, you know, you either love it or hate it. This is from Lighthouse Brewing Company, located in Esquimalt, British Columbia. If you're thinking Esquimalt, that seems like a weird name. That's because there's a lot of towns and cities, really all throughout Western Canada, that are named after First Nations, and Esquimalt is one of those. They opened in 1998. Now, this is kind of an interesting beer because I got my hands on this sort of in a sideway ways. This was only available through it was the holiday calendar series of beer, and I didn't want to. This last December, I was just coming off of unemployment. I didn't want to drop a couple $100 in a beer calendar, but what happened is the sales in the beer calendar kind of weren't that great. So a lot of places ended up selling these as singles, which got my weasel on. This is 7.2%, and it's dark. I mean, it's definitely a stout. You can see it's nice and thick. It's actually got a great head on it. You can smell it. It's got a little bit of licorice, but not as much as you might think. You might prepped up in your head. Anyways, I'm gonna have a couple sips here while Rob talks about his second pairing, getting stouty on us.
Yeah, absolutely. I kept it thick and dark. Giggity.
Giggity.
I'm going with the Founders KBS, which is the barrel-aged version of the Breakfast Stout. Now, this is the 2016 edition. This was bottled on March 3rd, and it's 12.4% alcohol by volume this year. It's a little bit different every year. The jury is kind of out as to whether you want to age KBS, and Brooke, maybe I'll get your opinion on that. I haven't done a side-by-side on these yet because I've got some from last year. When they started shipping Founders to California back in like September, a lot of the places around us got KBS from that year. So it was what was bottled in March or April. We got it in August. So I've got some that are about a year older than this. I haven't done a side-by-side to see how the taste differs, but just curious. Because some people say that, age it. Yeah, absolutely. Let it sit for a year or maybe two. After a while, you start losing that coffee. But then I've got some other friends who are like, yeah, I'm not going to drink it if it's older than like 6 months because it's just not going to taste right. So I don't know.
I would tend to agree with that. When I first got into craft beer like 6 years ago when I turned 21, everybody was all about aging stouts, and so I would buy these crazy, like, for a while I was really into the Hebrew Jubilation series. I don't know if you guys have had any other stuff. They especially when I started getting into craft beer, they were on like year 12. So the deal with those was every year it would be, so it's 12-year anniversary. So it would be 12 malts, 12 hops, and 12%. And so it was a serious beer. And so I bought a bunch of them and aged them. And I don't know. I never was that thrilled with aging beers. And I don't know. Obviously, I don't have a dedicated cellar for it. So I don't know if I had stored it at like 55 degrees or whatever, that would have made it better. But I just felt like very quickly, oxidation just naturally occurring from, air leaking into the cap. I just felt like it made the beer not taste as good as it was previously. So I don't know. I've never been a big proponent of aging beers. That being said, I have had some really good older stuff, like the Dogfish Head's Worldwide Stout. I had like a 6-year-old bottle of that at one point, and that's like 18%. And, it's almost undrinkably sweet, fresh, but with some age, it kind of dried out and almost had this kind of like port character to it. So
Interesting.
That was pretty solid. So it depends on the beer, but I've done the same with KBS, and I tend to like it a little fresher. 3 or 4 years old, it just tastes like, I don't know, a real raisiny and just kind of oxidized and not that good to me.
Well,
I think anything that you're going to have that coffee in, if you age it any longer than a year or two, you're going to start to lose that for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Totally. Just a little bit about the beer itself. Like I said, this year's version is 12.4%. That's really about all you guys need to know. It's KBS. If you find it, pick it up. It's not that easy to find, and it's not that cheap. It was $24.99 for a 4-pack. So it was. I walked into my local Bevmo, and they had like 5 or 6 4-packs, and I put
$24.99.
Yeah, for a 4-pack. Yeah.
Jeez, man.
Yeah. Other places I've seen it's more expensive. I see it's usually around 30. But
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's pricey. It's pricey for that. But I pick up a 4-pack, and that's if they have more when I go back, then maybe I'll get another one. But I've got enough stored in there that I don't need to pick up any for aging. And I can already tell you that this pairing is significantly better than my last one. But John, what were you going to say when I cut you off?
Sorry, I think I cut you off there. Thanks very much. So I was going to say to Johnny, if you had been on the cigar safari, I had a plan to bring you, and this might be an alternate plan for Vegas. I have some St. Ambrose Russian Imperial Stouts from 2012, and I've cracked one of them, and I got to tell you, it's magical. And I still have a couple left. I was actually planning on bringing one down for Robbie because we're going to get our beer on something fierce, I think, this IPCPR. So, there's always room in the luggage
I
for
am
another
always down. So St. Ambrose, are they in Montreal?
one.
Yeah, I went there when I was in Montreal. I did this crazy awesome bike tour. It was like an all day, 5 hour long, just cruising around Montreal. We got to ride on the F1 track and stopped for a pint at St. Ambrose along the way. So
Nice.
yeah, that was a cool brewery. Yeah.
What do you got going on for your second pairing?
So got another relatively local. Here's the double barley SteakCake Stout. So I've never had anything from this brewery before. They're in Smithfield, North Carolina, and it just appears to be an imperial stout, 10%. And so evidently they designed this beer to pair well with food. So one of the founders likes to pair it with cake, and another founder likes to pair it with steak. So hence the name. So it's pretty solid. I mean, it's hard to be a contender, I think, in the imperial stout category these days. There's so many amazing ones, but this is pretty solid. I'm impressed. This is a relatively small brewery, and they did a good job with it.
So talking about my second pairing, second pairing. And I was really anticipating, I think the audience was anticipating this licorice stout to be very black licorice, which I think if you and bring up the idea of black licorice and a stout in your mind, that could be kind of funky. And I was kind of hoping for a little bit of funk. That was really my intent. But instead, what I've got is a really creamy stout with just really like a hint of black licorice. And Rob, we've talked about this before on the show when we've talked about beers that are Oktoberfest beers. We've talked about it with pumpkin beers, and you know that I like when I buy a beer that's got something in it, whether it's pumpkin or whatever, I want that to be in my face. So I am a little let down by that, but that being said, it's going really well. I would say that the stout itself isn't necessarily standing out so much, but it's doing a great job with that creamy mouthfeel to almost reset my palate between draws. So I get, that really great spice from the L40, nice bit of sweetness. I have the nice coating sweet mouth feel from that stout. Kind of roll it around, take another puff on the cigar. So I think where the first stout for me was really showcasing the cigar, this second one is just kind of it's an everyman pairing. You go out on a patio, you have a beer, you have an L40, you're good. They don't really do anything for each other, but it's not bad.
Yeah, when I think of every man, I don't think of a licorice stout and an L40.
Not at all. That's yeah, no.
No, I was
John's a little jaded, I think.
Yeah, it just sounds like it. No, I was intrigued by that when I saw your photo posted up, as I'm sure there were a bunch of comments. So you don't get a lot of that kind of anise flavor from it?
I really don't, and like I said, that's kind of what I was going for when I saw it. I thought this is going to be really interesting. It could be awful, but one of the fun parts of our show is trying stuff that's funky, and sometimes it's really good, sometimes not so much. In this case, again, it's it's if you waved black licorice over top, that's as much black licorice influence as I'm getting. I would really like them to ramp it up. I really want more of that really thick anise flavor that I don't want it to overpower the stout, but I definitely want it in my face, and I'm not getting it in my face here at all.
All right, well, in a few years when Double R Brewing's up and running, I'll brew you a nice licorice stout.
Boom.
Johnny laughing in the background. Yeah, right. Well, I'll move to Asheville. They're just giving out breweries over there, it sounds like.
Giving them away.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I went with the KBS, and it's a barrel-aged stout that's brewed with chocolate and coffee. And the chocolate and coffee come together so nicely with the cigar because the cigar features a kind of a chocolate note, but that coffee bitterness that's coming out of the KBS really brings out more spice from the UF13 that I was getting before. it almost elevates the earthy notes that you're getting from the cigar. I feel like the beer really takes the cigar and lifts up the flavor profile completely, and the flavor from the beer is pretty damn good as well. This is so who asked the question earlier? What was your favorite Drew Estate pairing? This might be it right here.
Nice.
For me. I mean, this is really hitting on all cylinders for me right now.
Yeah, KBS is an outstanding beer. I think it's got some oatmeal in it too, right?
It's an oatmeal stout. Yeah.
Yeah. So that adds to the
stout.
kind of silky mouthfeel. You know, it gives it that kind of, just nice, smooth character.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely smooth, and the barrel aged that bourbon flavor that you get from it. It's almost kind of a sweet oaky note that's there. That's still there for me, and I'm getting it. It kind of lingers on the palate a little bit, actually. But that type of flavor goes really well with the flavors that are coming from the cigar. This is just, it's definitely, I mean, these things are really going hand in hand. Absolutely. So tell us about the Imperial Stout you got there, Johnny.
So yeah, this pairing is definitely shaping up to be much better than the first one. So the Radzilla, as it progresses, the spice is kind of tapering off a little bit, and I think a lot more of the kind of sweeter kind of cocoa notes are coming out. So that's matching up really nicely with this stout. This is not like my all-time favorite stout by any means. It's good, but it's a little sweet to me. That's one thing with Imperial stouts. Sometimes they can be really sweet. Like to me, Dark Lord is so overhyped, and I mean that beer is just insanely sweet. I mean, I could put it on my pancakes. It is like syrup. So it's kind of tough sometimes to find a good balance there. I think that's, to me, what makes KBS so good is that it's not too crazy sweet and not too in your face in any way. Again, it's just kind of a balanced beer. So this one is good. It's again, not the greatest, but the pairing, I think, is definitely better than my first pairing, just because as I said, that spice is kind of tapering off, and the sweetness from the beer is really matching up really nicely with a little sweetness from the cigar. So it's going nice.
I think I'm actually getting some similar qualities as I'm reaching the halfway point of my L40. As you say, there's a lot of cocoa coming through, and it's again at this point tough to tell whether it's being drawn out by the stout, but I don't think so. I think that's just for me the natural quality of the L40.
Totally. I think it's and I mean I find that to be the case with almost any real strong spicy cigar. They come out of the gate hot and heavy, and then generally will taper off around the midway point and kind of balance out a little bit. So, that's definitely happening here.
I'm actually kind of having the opposite experience. I didn't get much spice at all from the UF13 at the beginning, and it's starting to ramp up here in the second half, and mainly on the retrohale, but it's coming together really, really nicely with the KBS. Johnny, the way you were describing the Dark Lord, which I have one, I haven't tried it yet. A buddy of mine in Chicago sent me one, and I actually didn't even know what it was when he sent it to me. When you start to, I'm totally new when it comes to craft beer. I mean, I've really only been doing it for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So, and there's so many things that when I just go down to my local bottle shop or whatever, I'm not going to know what Dark Lord is because I'm never going to see it.
No, you're not.
My buddy in Chicago, he goes to like beer releases every weekend, and
nice.
We set up a trade. I sent him some Pliny, and some Blind Peg and a few different things from out here, and I haven't had that yet. But the way you were talking about it, that's the way I feel about the Bourbon County from this year. I feel like it's super super sweet, and I was kind of disappointed actually.
Yeah, I mean I almost wish those beers were packaged in like 5-ounce bottles, because I can drink about that much, and then that's about all there is for me, and I can understand where people like them, but I don't know. Dark Lord, it's highly variable by the year too. I mean, I think Bourbon County's the same way. Any of these kind of yearly release stouts, there's so many factors that go into it. When you're brewing a 15 or 16% beer, a little bit of under attenuation can make it, from pleasantly sweet to like undrinkably cloying.
Issues.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fine line, and Dark Lord, I think, is a prime example of that. Because I know, Thor from Cigar Press. We both lived in Miami at the same time for a while, and so he would go up to Chicago, which is where he's from, where he lives now, and go to Dark Lord Day, and he'd bring back bottles, and so we'd taste them, and some years it'd be amazing and like mind blowing, and some years it would just be too sweet and kind of couldn't drink it. So I ended up with like 6 or 7 bottles of Dark Lord in my collection, and ended up trading it all for like Heady Topper and stuff like that, because that's just what my palate has definitely shifted over the years too, from heavy imperial stout guy to a IPA-aholic. I mean, I am such a hoppy beer nut now. It's kind of annoying.
Yeah, dude, we're going right down the same path. One annual release, big body beer, high alcohol beer that I feel like every time I've had it, and there's so many variants that come out, and I don't know how popular it is around the country, but the Eclipse from 50/50 Brewing in Truckee.
Yeah, that's on my list, man. I've never had it, and I know Pete Johnson is like a total nut about that beer. I always see him posting about it, and I'd love to try it.
Oh yeah, well
It's magical.
we'll see you at IPCPR, man. I'll bring some.
That'd be good.
Yeah, my wife, she works for a family that owns a property up in Westlake, so she's up there a lot, and she'll swing by and pick up a few things for me. But every time I've had that, and every year, granted, they've got 15 different ones that come out or whatever the number is, but every one that I've had, and granted, those are like $35 a bottle. That's the retail price. It's expensive as hell, but it's worth it, man. Every one that I've had. We just popped one. I had one with June, who does the What Embargo show. He was over here when I was brewing my chocolate milk stout a couple weeks ago, and helping me out. And he brought over one from 2014, and it was the High West Rye. It was legit, man.
Dude, I love High West, man.
So good.
To me, they make their Midwinter Night's Dram. That was my like top whiskey of the year last year or 2 years ago, whenever it first came out. That they do some really good stuff.
Yeah, and they seem to be pretty liberal with their barrels once they're done, which is nice. So
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. We're gonna move on to the next one or take some questions, but this second pairing for me with the KBS is a no-brainer. Absolutely.
There you go. We've got a lot of audience questions. I cracked my first 50/50. I've got a couple sitting cellaring, as it were. Although I don't have a cellar, but yeah, I cracked the 50/50 Elijah Craig, and it was everything. It was it was 2014. I think it was the end of 2014. At any rate, it was phenomenal. Everything I wanted it to be and more.
I picked up just recently. Actually, not recently. About 7 or 8 months ago. I picked up a bottle of, it was the 2012 Eclipse that was aged in Old Fitzgerald bottles or barrels. And
nice.
Obviously you can't get Old Fitzgerald anymore. So I've got one of those sitting, and the last one that my wife picked up was 2000. This is weird because you can tell by the wax that's on the bottle, and it's the High West single malt. One said 2012, the other said 2014. On the bottle, but in 2012 they didn't use that color wax, so I'm thinking that the person just wrote the wrong year on the bottle. So,
that's funny.
But I don't know. But
mistake, your win.
Yeah, and they do another one. It's called Bart. It's barrel aged, really tasty, and it's kind of a lower level. It's still $20 a bottle. That's really freaking good too. And they do a vanilla and a coffee version. I think the coffee you can only get at the brewery, but those are really, really tasty too. Doesn't hit
confused with the Bay Area Rapid Transit.
I think that's what they're playing off of. Yeah.
So how far are you from the brewery, Placencia, California, Rob?
About 6 hours.
6 hours. Okay.
That's down near LA. Yeah.
But right down the street, really.
Yeah. It's
right it's corner in Cali, right?
Yeah, it's funny. Whenever cigar guys come to LA, they're like, "Hey, man, I'm in California. We should hang out." I'm like, "Oh, where are you?" It's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm down in Hollywood." I was like, "Well, you want to hop a plane and fly up here? Yeah, we can hang out." There's a lot of cool stuff going on down there. I haven't had much from the brewery. No, I haven't had Black Tuesday or anything like that.
They make some crazy beer. I mean, We actually traded with them like 5 years ago. Somebody who works there, I think in their packaging department, is a big cigar guy. So we sent them a bunch of cigars, and they sent us some beer, and that was kind of a mind-blowing experience back then, because they sent us like one of their Berliner Weisses, and this was like 5 years ago, so I didn't even know what a Berliner Weiss was, and it was like 3% and insanely sour, and they do some really interesting stuff. I mean, obviously their stouts are world class, Black Tuesday and Chocolate Rain and all that, but all their other stuff's really interesting. John, if you like the pumpkin beer style, their Autumn Maple, which is their fall seasonal, it's brewed with I think yams and a bunch of other spices. It is so good, and maple syrup. It is super tasty.
Nice.
That's the one thing from them that I've had.
Yeah,
it's the one thing I've had. It was good. It had that kind of Belgian-y feel to it that I haven't quite come around on yet.
Yeah, totally.
And I've got a bottle of 8 Maids of Milken in the fridge.
A lot of their beers have that kind of Belgian character. I mean, they're I think strongly in that kind of farmhouse realm of brewing. So that's definitely part of their whole thing.
Well, I'm gonna hop into our last pairing here as we come down to our last 12 minutes of the Armed Forces Radio Network segment, and no pairing of stouts would be complete without my favorite, Dieu Ciel, from Quebec, who is unfortunately pulling all of their beer from Western Canada, from Alberta because of taxes. Thank you very much, NDP government. Although they are encouraging local breweries as a result, Dieu Ciel is pulling back, so I'm going to have to go crazy and fill my cellar. This is from their Momentum series, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that and take some sips. This is the Grande Noirceur, and it is thick and dark and syrupy and delicious. The Momentum series, they do basically a monthly release of a different style of beer. This is 9% ABV. They say it's an intensely aromatic stout with persistent roasted flavors, strong bitterness playing with caramel malt to balance things out, while the higher alcohol amplifies all of the things. So I'm going to take some sips while Rob talks about his last pairing, and then we'll talk about what our favorite pairing was before we end our first segment here.
Just to go into that monthly thing, Modern Times is a brewery down in San Diego, and I've talked about them before on the show. They do something similar to that. They've got some stuff that comes out monthly. And I actually wanted to have one of their beers, the City of the Dead, which for me is probably the best, just straight up coffee stout that I've ever had. It's fantastic. And but I didn't want to crack a bomber tonight because I've got to go to work after this, and this is already enough beer. So, but anyway, just a shout out to Modern Times because they're doing some really cool stuff. My final pairing, which I know I've paired on this show before, is Prairie Bomb. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it.
So good.
They actually just lowered the price at my local Bevmo. They have these in stock all the time, and it's $7.99 now for a bottle.
Really?
Start cellaring that.
That's a really good price, man. That's cheaper than it is here. I figured California taxes would blow that out of the water.
Yeah, it was $9.99, and I went down and they have them at $7.99 now. So I picked up one.
Buy a case.
Yeah, I might just when the wife's not looking and I've got some space. I do have a beer fridge in the office, which I'm outside because my internet connection was jacked up, but it's pretty full. I need to make some room in there, so I might just rage for a weekend and then just go buy a ton of Prairie Bomb. But I'm not going to go too much into it. But it's Imperial Stout aged with coffee, cacao nibs, vanilla bean, and chili peppers. They basically throw everything in the kitchen sink in there, and somehow it works. And we'll talk more about some different things from Prairie because the Christmas bomb for me was a miss this year. But yeah, it's just kind of funky. I don't know.
Their variants. I mean, to me, the regular old bomb is the best thing they make, like by a wide margin.
Yeah, I cracked a bottle open this year, and they got the new label on it. It doesn't have the Home Alone kid on it anymore, and I was tasting it and I was excited about it. My wife was like, "Oh, you're cracking that open tonight? Big deal." And and she tried it. And she's like, "Yeah, it's like they took a really good beer and put a bunch of unnecessary stuff in it." And that's basically what it tasted like. But we can get into more of that later. But I know we're running up against it, John.
Complications for the sake of complications. Never a good time.
Absolutely.
So this, of course, and I was fully anticipating this to be the best stout of the night, and it is because, I'm a fanboy for Dieu Ciel.
Do you think they're the best brewery in Canada?
Say again?
Do you think they're the best brewery in Canada?
Oh, they're the best brewery for me. I was at a tasting, and we could probably talk more about this in the After Dark, but I was at a tasting where I did almost a full vertical of everything with their brewmaster, and the guy is fantastically odd and interesting, and he's one of those guys where you could listen to him talk about brewing for 3 hours and never get bored.
Nice.
This stout just has a wonderful, thick, stouty mouth quality, and all the character that they discuss, where it's got this really upfront roasted maltiness with a trailing bitterness, very true. Does it pair well with the L40? Probably not the best pairing of the night. I think surprisingly the Tofino Brewing Kelp Stout absolutely supported this cigar all day long and twice on Sundays. That was just the perfect stout to go with this cigar because, again, that saltiness just draws out all of the character from the cigar. Does that mean other stouts won't go well? I mean, I'm going to try a bunch of different stouts with my L40s as they last. But Rob, what was your favorite pairing of the night?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about the Prairie Bomb. The vanilla bean is lost with the cigar. It kind of gets run over here. I'm not getting any of that chili pepper that's in there. It's mainly, excuse me. It's mainly sitting with that coffee and the cocoa. And there is a big bird just flew behind me. Pterodactyl. Seriously, I'm getting kind of a weird stewed stone fruit flavor coming out of it for some reason, which I don't normally get out of Prairie Bomb. So that's a little bit off-putting, but I've only taken a few sips. It takes a while for the palate to kind of transition in between the two. I mean, for me, the KBS pairing, I would put that up against any pairing we've ever done on this show ever with this UF13. I actually would be just a great, I don't know, week for me would be to line up the entire Unico series and pair them all with KBS. That just sounds.
I think KBS would go with just about any Maduro cigar out there.
Yeah, right.
It's such a good cigar beer. It goes so well.
Yeah, it's versatile. It's great, and it's big enough to kind of knock you on your butt a little bit. So you probably really just want it's the perfect amount of beer for like a Robusto sized cigar. It's a perfect combo, I think. So that for me is the best pairing. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think Brooke gave us a great idea there. Maybe we'll switch things up in a future show and do 3 Maduro cigars in a single KBS and just go wild and crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like that's going to go wrong at all.
Yeah. How could just be all cutting and lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cut and light show.
That'll be interesting, right?
It'll take some work in post production, I think.
Yeah.
Post yeah.
Bring the butane.
Yeah, exactly. We won't be doing that show live because it's going to take 7 hours.
Exactly. So, Brooke, I think we probably know the answer, but what was your favorite pairing of the night?
Yeah, I didn't have a third, so I think the stout is going to have to take it just because I think it's the logical choice. I mean, it's a solid stout, nothing mind blowing, but you know the Radzilla is a obviously delicious cigar, so it matched up really nicely. So I wish I had a bomb or KBS right now, but my local. So North Carolina is weird. We have state-run liquor stores and then independently owned beer stores, but then like our grocery stores have a really surprisingly good selection of craft beer. So I got my beer at Ingles of all places. So they didn't have KBS or bomb, unfortunately. So
there you go, North Carolina. Step up your game. Seriously.
Yeah, it's weird laws, but anyway, yeah, it was a solid pairing for sure.
So we're gonna wrap it up with a comment and a question here. Jeff Madre, Johnny says if you like smoked beers, he recommends Full Stream in Raleigh. He says they've got a delicious hickory smoked brew called Hogwash.
Nice.
I'm in.
That sounds like a Kentucky Fire Cured pairing if I've ever heard of one.
The KFC and the Hogwash, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds very the Kentucky Fire Cured Flying Pig and the Hogwash.
Absolutely.
Get her done.
Yeah.
And Douglas Shepard, he wants to know, this is sort of a general audience question, general panel question, wants to know if you could only smoke one Vitola, what would it be and why? Rob, what would you pick as a Vitola? I think I know the
Vitola
answer.
of any cigar. I mean, for me, if you guys follow, Cigar Federation at all, you know that I'm a Lonsdale guy. If it's not a Lonsdale, it's a Corona Gorda. For me, I mean, it all depends on the blend, but I don't know. Maybe I go in with a little bit of placebo. Everything that's put out in a Lonsdale, I feel like that's the best size. So that's where I head.
Brooke, what about you?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, Corona, that dirty rat size to me is about as perfect as it gets, But a Lonsdale, I mean, the Herrera Lonsdale is
Forgot about it.
dynamite, Yep. So, yeah, totally agree.
Well, this is not going to be very diverse of opinion because I'm totally on the same page. In fact, I remember when we got to sit down with Willie in Esteli and smoke the entire range of her Esteli, and that Lonsdale was just absolutely magical.
Oh yeah, it's the standout. I mean, the Herrera Esteli, the Lancero, the Limitada, that was outstanding as well. But regular production, the Lonsdale is where it's at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So as we wrap it up, I just want to remind our audience that you can check us out at cigarfederation.com. Make sure to subscribe and toss us an upvote, up thumbs, up arrow, whatever you've got from whatever you're listening to, whether you're listening on iTunes or podcasts. We certainly appreciate your support. I've changed my email because we're having some technology issues. So my email used to be john@cigarfederation.com, but it is now surgeon@cigarfederation.com. So if you want to get your comments or questions in for the show, you can drop me an email. You can also drop an email to rob@cigarfederation.com. We're happy to have your mail. We'll read it online, provided that we can blank out the swears if there are swears. If you have any suggestions for the show, send her in.
I didn't realize that you changed your email. Is that why you haven't been responding to me?
That's probably why I haven't been responding to you.
There it is.
Yeah, we've put the least technological person on Cigar Federation in charge of technology, and that has worked out wonderfully. No, not at all. I can talk crap about him because he's in India right now, and there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah, that's Rob@cigarfederation.com still works. So that's Rob is easier to spell than surgeon. So by all means, send your questions, comments, concerns to that email, and I'll probably ignore most of them, but any good ones we'll put on the show for sure. I just one last comment. I was this close to going with a dirty rat, but I got one dirty rat left, and I couldn't bring myself to do it with my last dirty rat. So I'm gonna have to get some more, but I feel like a dirty rat show would be good too. We could do like 6 months of shows just on Unicos and KBS.
Yeah, I was between a Radzilla and a Velvet. I was between the two, and
show off.
Both are good. Both favorites. It's tough.
I've got a story about that I'll talk about in our After Dark segment. But I just want to thank all of our Armed Forces Radio Network listeners, wherever you're stationed in the world. We certainly appreciate you tuning into our show for the 58 minutes. Thanks very much. And if you do want to drop us a line, feel free. As we always say on sharing our pairings, make sure to drink better, but drink less. And as Logan likes to say, we're fucking back. So we of course are still live, heard around the world on podcast. We were still being broadcast on YouTube, but now we can cuss because the FDA, FTC can't
FCC.
FCC. I don't know, I'm Canada.
You were close.
FDA.
The Prime Minister can't do shit.
That's right. Oligarchy, they can suck it.
The FCC.
The FCC. So I've actually got. I'll tell a quick story that probably won't be very interesting, but I have a box of dirty rats. I was down at Corona Cigar Company, and Marvin was there, and he was. This was for my yearly trip down to Orlando to check out Disney World. And I went into Corona Cigar Company because it always tends to sort of line up where the Drew Estate event is happening at Corona Cigar Company, and I was down there for hanging out with the girlfriend and doing a holiday. So I said, well, I got to take off because there's a cigar event, so see ya. And, this happens pretty much wherever we go. And I walked in, and there's just boxes and boxes of Unicos, and I walk up to Marvin, and I say, so, what do I have to do to get a box of Dirty Rats? And he looks at me kind of funny. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, so like, do I need to buy a couple boxes of T50? Like, what do I need to do? He's like, what's wrong with you, dude? And he picks up the entire stack. He's like, buy whatever you want. And I said, you shouldn't say that to me, because I might buy 20 boxes of Dirty Rats and take them back with me, either to hoard them or sell them. So I ended up taking 2 boxes of Dirty Rats, and being a Canadian, I said, I can't keep them both. I gave one to my friend and kept one for myself. But
did you apologize before you left?
I did. Yeah. I actually said to Marvin, I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't take them all because that wouldn't be fair to the other people that are attending the event, but I am very, very tempted to take all of them.
And I'm sorry for the 2 that I'm buying.
That's right.
Yes.
But
I apologize.
we could definitely do a Dirty Rat show, because they've been having a nice little nap in my humidor.
Yeah, I'll have to get my hands on a few more. Like I said, I think I've only got one left.
So Dirty Rat story for me. When I got hired, it's been a little over 6 years now, about 6 years and 2 months. And when I got hired, we were just starting to work on the Dirty Rat. It was still just kind of an in-house, private kind of thing that we were smoking. And so I worked in the office with Joey, our creative director, and we would just get bundles of Dirty Rats, like on a weekly basis, just for the 2 of us. Bundles of like 25, and we were just chain smoking Dirty Rats. This was, I thought I had died and gone to heaven as like a 21-year-old cigar geek. It was quite the awesome job.
That sounds like a good way to start, man.
Yeah, it was good times for sure.
Little did you know that. Are you still getting bundles of Dirty Rats? I don't know.
No, those days are long over. That was before Liga became such a hot item. I mean, it's difficult now. Realistically, Liga is too popular.
I've noticed that they've become a bit more available, and maybe it's the time of year because they go through cycles. But it seems like
we finally caught up. I think that's the thing. I mean, there's kind of a 3-year delay on Liga because of, the fermentation schedule of the wrapper. It's it's kind of like whiskey or something like that. It's like, okay, well, demand spikes, and it's like, well, we can't really do anything about it for another 3 years. It's just the wrapper takes forever. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's definitely, especially like the core, Liga number 9 T52. They're definitely easier to come by these days, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I remember the first time I went down on Cigar Safari, and I remember actually you specifically called me out. We were out on the farm. We were walking around the farm, and it was a media trip, and I was taking video with my phone, and I was holding it. I was holding my phone like this.
Oh no.
And you were like,
one of my biggest pet peeves in life.
No, you totally called me out. You were like, Robbie, dude, what are you doing with your phone? Why are you taking your? And literally,
oriented, Rob. Is it up and down or is it side to side?
And I was seriously just using that for notes. I wasn't going to post any video because I had never done video at that point. This was before Cigar Federation. And I was like, no, dude, I'm just taking video. But then from then on, I was like, this. Like, Johnny scolded me. I got to change my camera around.
I'm glad.
It's so funny. But I remember when we went, like, we were in the it's all situated differently now. But the Liga room had nobody was doing anything on the T52 side. There was nobody there. And on the number 9 side, people were just working away and wrapping and doing cigars and everything. But the T52 side was like empty. And when I got home, I bought a couple boxes of T52s, and I'm not going to see these for a while. Nobody's making them.
Yep. Yeah, that wrapper was particularly difficult. I mean, and still is, but there was a while there where T52s were almost impossible to come by.
And that's my favorite cigar. That I prefer T52. Really, over any of the Unicos and anything else that Drew Estate does, and really anything that most people do, that T52, and in Esteli at the Drew Estate compound is really the only place I can smoke that cigar for breakfast. But roll right out of bed and fire one up. Just feels right down there for some reason.
Fire it up in bed, man. Why do you even need to get out of bed?
No, well, we kept our room was a smoke-free zone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just trying to. You gotta have some place where it's like, okay,
Dude, so many guys will just lay in bed or in the shower or in the bathroom. It's like non-stop food down there.
No, I'm all about the shower beer, but the shower cigar is a little bit strange.
Well, just logistically, it's
Yeah,
like
you're running into issues. Yeah,
you're literally trying to keep something on fire, and you're surrounded by water. So
yeah.
The Fedhead crew was powering through a box of T52s by noon every day.
I'm sure.
Every day.
I'm sure.
It's crazy.
There was, it's a great. I mean, we've waxed on about Cigar Safari a lot on the show and on Cigar Chat as well, and obviously we've had the two Cigar Federation trips, so we probably don't need to talk about it too much more. But it's such a great experience, and I mean, if somehow you're listening to this and you've never looked into it, you really need to look into it. Although they're probably already sold out for 2016 or 2017, I would imagine. So, oh, you're talking, Johnny, but you're muted.
yeah, definitely 16, not 17. We'll announce 17 dates on Memorial Day. So,
okay.
If you're interested, definitely get on our email list, and that's how we always kind of communicate that. And it's unfortunately just a supply and demand thing. We've only got like 15 places to sleep there, so
yeah,
there's only so many people that we can have down every year. So
yeah, and doubling up in the larger beds isn't an option.
Yeah, nobody wants to be the little spoon.
Yeah, it's not that kind of trip, guys. It's not that kind of trip.
People will just get over it, It's like, it's worth it,
Time to install some bunk beds.
Yeah,
yeah, bunk it up, yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely an awesome trip, so. Anyway, we could talk about something else.
Yeah, before we get into craft beer talk or brewing talk and roasting coffee talk, because I know we're going to probably do a couple minutes on that, I'm just going to power through some of these audience questions. This is more of a Johnny Brooke question. Douglas just wants to know what drew, no pun intended, you to working with Drew Estate in public and media relations.
So I had a little cigar blog back when I was in college, and it's called The Weekly Cigar, and started it up when I was still at Georgia State, living in Atlanta, and ended up moving to Fort Lauderdale with my wife. She was going to school down there to get a doctorate, and so I just moved with her, had no job prospects whatsoever, and ended up meeting Jonathan at an event, and we just started talking about web stuff, and they had literally no social media presence whatsoever at that point. So, I still had like a Flash website, and it was they were definitely, I don't know that they were behind at that point, because 6 years ago that really wasn't that popular for businesses to have a huge social media presence, especially in the cigar industry, which is kind of a it's kind of an old school industry. But so they hired me on, and that's been my full-time gig ever since. So it's been a fun ride. It's a good company to work for, good people, and well, obviously we've grown the social media thing to be pretty big. So it's good stuff, exciting stuff. So it's been a lot of fun along the way.
This next question, I'm gonna try and phrase it as gently as possible, because I've got a lot of questions around this. So not to throw you under the bus here, but it is from On, and it is his goat week, so I feel like I can't pass over this question. But do you have any information about the Year of the Rat cigars? Because everyone's crazy about Year of the Rat cigars. So can you?
Yeah,
can
sure.
You drop a little
So I know there was a bit of a hubbub or whatever you want to call it on Reddit. Obviously. So Year of the Rat, in case anybody's not familiar with it, it's a custom cigar for our newest lounge at the BB&T Center in Sunrise, Florida, which is the stadium where the Florida Panthers play. And so we've partnered up with them and basically put in our, I think, third Drew Estate Lounge or fourth Drew Estate Lounge there. And so the, official launch party was on Friday, April 1st, I think. And so that was kind of it was a private event, kind of our industry friends and family, and we did end up inviting some consumers from the local area, came out, smoked and drank and stuff that night. And so the wording on the press release was admittedly definitely confusing. The cigar launched April 1st, but then the April 2nd there was a game, and the cigar was not really available to purchase. So yeah, working it out. It's weird because obviously BB&T Center is not a tobacconist in any way, shape, and form. So, it's been trying to figure all that out and logistics and tobacco licenses and all that kind of stuff. And, we just weren't really ready when we should have been. And, obviously super apologetic to anybody who came out to the game that Saturday night expecting to buy cigars. If you did and you didn't see my Reddit post about it, email us, help@drewestate.com with a picture of your ticket, and we'll get you squared away. But we still don't have an official date when it's going to be available at the lounge, but I think it's going to be quite soon. But we'll make an announcement when that happens. So it's it's purely just selling tobacco. There's a lot of requirements, obviously, to go along with that. So we're trying to figure that out. But yeah, so that's the year of the rat. I still haven't even had it. I'm kind of antsy to try it because obviously Dirty Rat's one of my favorite cigars. So I would definitely like to try it.
Now I can't speak about the blend or the cigar itself. I mean, obviously I haven't smoked. I'm way out in California. I haven't smoked it. And I'm not getting to wherever it's available in Florida to watch the Panthers play. I'm not a hockey guy to begin with. I actually had to look up to make sure that they were a hockey team. Yeah, I mean, California.
Cricket.
It's cricket. Cricket. You may get me out there for some cricket. Hockey just has never stirred my Kool-Aid. But one thing I will say about Drew Estate as a company, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, even though this probably doesn't really fall too much under your umbrella. If you ever have a problem with a Drew Estate product of any kind, and you let them know, they will take care of you. And that's one thing that I've noticed, and really in the cigar industry, there's companies that really, really embrace that. They're like, hey, you bought a box and they were all broken or whatever. They're going to take care of you. And then there's companies who will just completely ignore you. But Drew Estate's not one of those companies. So if you ever have a problem,
it's a major priority for us. I mean, when I first started, that was another one of my responsibilities was customer service because we didn't have a customer service department per se. So, over the years, we've obviously expanded that and gotten a Zendesk system, which is a much more organized ticketing system. So basically trying not to let anybody slip through the cracks. So if you ever have trouble, use the Contact Us page on our website, and we'll get you guys squared away for sure.
And one thing I do remember from that first safari that I went to, and this is when Steve Sacco was still with the company, so it was 2013, I think, was the year that I was down there. When we were flying back, the trip was over, and we're flying back, and we're all in that small Nicaraguan airport, in Managua, and there was a woman came up to Steve and was talking to him about something about tins or of acids or something.
I remember that, dude. She was like the flight attendant, and she was all into acid crush or something.
It was, it had something.
He gave her his email address and was like, email me and I'll send you some crush. I remember that, man.
Yeah, it was, but to me, that kind of embodied the way that you guys approach customer service as a whole. I mean, he listened to this woman for a good 15 minutes. I mean, they were talking for a while. And the average company is not going to put up with that, but he was gracious, and obviously I assume that she got whatever it is that she was looking to get. So, not suggesting that you need to go hunt people down and spend 20 minutes on the phone, but if you have some sort of problem, Drew Estate's definitely going to take care of you.
I mean, here's the thing: at the end of the day, we make like 120,000 cigars a day. So, what is sparing a handful to try to make one of our customers feel better, it's the least we can do, and it just makes sense.
There you go. So I'm going to hit up one quick question here before we just start waxing poetic about whatever. And it's kind of an interesting question. Eric Johnson says the Undercrown was his first ever box purchase and still one of his favorites. I love the Undercrown. I'm wearing the shirt. He says, because of its accessibility, it's a very easy way to introduce people to Drew Estate. What are some of your go-tos that might not be particularly glamorous, but still complex and dynamic? I'm going to jump in on that one. I would say the Nica Rustica is a fantastic follow-up. If you like the Underground, yeah, it's totally in the same wheelhouse. I love the Nica Rustica. I smoke those all day long.
I mean, I'm a broadleaf nerd. I mean, I would say broadleaf is one of my all-time favorite tobaccos, if not my all-time favorite tobacco. And you would be hard-pressed to find a high-quality premium cigar wrapped in Connecticut broadleaf wrapper for $7. You know, I mean, it's a very good cigar for the money, and I totally agree with you. It's a great, you know, if you can deal with a little bit more strength, you know, I mean, if you're not just a total, you know, Connecticut shade guy or whatever. I mean, to me, an Underground is a pretty heavy cigar to go as your first cigar. That's, you know, it's got some spice, it's got some power. But yeah, Nica Rustica I think is even better for beginner because it's way more in that medium, you know, strength wheelhouse. So totally.
Rob, what do you think?
I've been cutting out, and I don't know if you guys can even hear me at this point. But,
Yeah, we can
I didn't
hear
hear the
you.
question.
You didn't get the question?
Yeah, no, my internet's been jacking with me.
The question was essentially, Eric Johnson was saying the Undercrown was his introduction to Drew Estate, and he's wondering what else from the profile would you recommend?
I didn't really get it that time. Again, I don't know if you guys can still hear me, but I'll talk a little bit. And I'm assuming the kind of an intro Drew Estate cigar was the gist that I was getting there, and you're giving me the thumbs up. I would go back. Like, I know you guys were talking about the Nica Rustica, I think, a little bit there. The Undercrown Corona Viva to me is a beautiful blend. It's a really good cigar. If you want to go with just kind of maybe an intro that's not going to really blow your face off, but has a ton of flavor, go back to that original Herrera Esteli.
Yeah.
That's just got, and like we talked about earlier, in that Lonsdale size, because forget about it. But that's a beautiful cigar as well. When you get into the Liga Privadas and things like that, and the Unicos and stuff, you're definitely jumping up in strength. So if you want to stay in more of that medium
and
profile,
price, you know,
and in price, absolutely, yeah.
If you're a new guy,
that's a very good point too.
Cigar is going to be a tough pill to swallow, realistically, you know. So
yeah,
you know, Undercrown.
That's true. That's a really good point. And that's
Undercrown shade. If you're a Connecticut shade guy, I mean, even if you're not, that's got a lot more, to me, flavor than a traditional Connecticut shade cigar. I mean, totally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
I would recommend the Undercrown, and the Undercrown for me. If you're not going for the Corona Viva, just go with the Toro. That Undercrown and the Toro size really does shine, and that Herrera Esteli. Those would be my two recommendations.
Forget about it. So you guys want to nerd out about brewing? Because I know, Rob, you're a brewing fiend. I know, Brooke, you can talk brewing all day long.
Yes, I can. So I will talk a little bit about my new brewing system that I'm quite excited about. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this thing called the Grainfather. It's an electric, all-in-one brewing system. Basically, it's like a big pot with a metal sleeve in it that has holes perforated in it, and so it's a recirculating mash system. And so you set your mash temp, and it uses the electric element, maintains it dead on as long as you want. Like I started a mash, went to my homebrew club meeting for 3 hours. It ended up lasting, and then came back. It was still dead on the right temp, mashed out, boiled. Ended up making a great beer with it. So I've been really getting into the electric brewing side of things because it's just so convenient. I mean, if I wanted to, I could brew in my kitchen. You know, it's pretty sweet. I'm definitely digging the electric side of things for sure. And I just got a draft system, so I got 2 beers on draft in my garage, which is definitely it's a dangerous thing to have. It's a lot of extra calories that you can easily consume in a day. You know, we can just go down and I'll have a little half pint, you know, and that ends up being 4 pints over the course of the day. It's awesome.
I've been noticing that myself with the caloric intake.
Oh yeah.
Not necessarily from my beer, because I've only I've only got 2 beers that are bottled that I've brewed. The first one was a brown ale, and it's just not very good. I feel like from a technical standpoint, I did a lot of things right. The clarity is good, the head's good, the head retention is good, the flavor is not. That's kind of the issue there, and my IPA is not really ready to be cracked yet. It's been bottle conditioning for about 3 weeks, and I cracked one open this past weekend, and it was still very floral tasting. So I think it needs another week or so.
My recommendation: go kegging as soon as you can humanly afford it, because man, I mean, imagine instead of filling 48 individual bottles, it's basically one giant bottle that then you carbonate, and it's ready in like 5 days. It's
How long does it last in the keg?
Indefinitely. So the thing is, when you keg a beer, you can purge the oxygen from the keg, because CO2 is heavier than oxygen. So there's a little pressure release valve on the top of a keg. You pull that, the carbon dioxide fills the keg, and then you put beer in there. And I mean, hoppy beers, they'll fade always. I mean, hops just I think the oils and aroma of hops just break down fairly rapidly, but still a month, 2 months, you're still going to be fine. And you can have as much or as little as you want. When you have a party, it is awesome. And there's no bottling. Bottling is the crappiest part of homebrewing, without question. It sucks. It's a mess. Like, I do it in my kitchen, and every time I end up getting in a fight with my wife because I get like sticky freaking beer all over the place.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Dude, kegging is the way to go.
Well, okay, this is going to lead into a longer conversation, maybe offline, but I just got an all grain system.
Nice.
I picked it up from a guy on Craigslist, and I've been talking about brewing all grain for weeks now. I haven't had a chance to do it, but it's just through the like the 10-gallon coolers you get from Home Depot or whatever,
Yeah.
And it's got the false bottom in one of them. So I haven't done that yet. I'm going to do a Smash, 2-row, and Galaxy is my first.
Cool.
My first one, just to pale ale, just to see.
Yeah.
My goal is to actually brew something that tastes good. I haven't gotten there yet.
The other thing is, with those types of beers, dry hop them. Like,
absolutely.
Don't hesitate to dry hop, because to me, you can brew an amazing IPA with one bittering addition at like 60 minutes and nothing else, and then just dry hop it, and you will have a really nice IPA with very little work.
Okay, yeah, I'll send you my recipe. I pulled it up through, what is this, Beersmith, and I've got my little recipe. I'll run it by you to see what.
Shoot it over. Yeah, I've been brewing on and off for at least, I guess, 5 or 6 years now, and
oh wow,
it's fun, man. It's just really nice to be able to make your own stuff, and I mean, you can save a lot of money. I mean, that's the thing. I'm such a big IPA guy that, I want a session IPA on draft at all times, and if I'm buying a 6-pack or more of those a week, that adds up. $10 to $12 6-pack.
Yep.
When you can brew 5 gallons of it for like $20.
Yeah,
it's a no-brainer. And,
yeah. Well, see, now I got to go buy kegs. I actually was looking on Craigslist just recently, and there's a guy who's got a bunch, and I think they're ball kegs. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, ball valve,
I know nothing about kegs, but he was selling them for like $35 a piece.
Nice.
That's
a good price. That's a good price. Yeah.
You're gonna get some emails from me, dude. I'll send you this link offline, and we'll see if this is a direction I need to go, because once you keg it though, you have to keep it refrigerated, right?
Correct. But dude, just find a chest freezer is probably the best thing, because you can hold like 6 kegs in a standard chest freezer. You build it. It's like, they call it a collar, but it's basically a couple 2x4s around the lip, and then you add the lid to that, so it's just a little taller, and then you get a little temperature controller for like $25 off Amazon, and that'll keep it like 45 degrees or whatever you want it to be refrigerated to, and very low energy, and it's so worth it, man.
Well, it's a good thing that my wife and I are looking at getting a bigger house, because I'm going to need more space.
Oh, dude. Yeah, we just bought the house we're in, and I thought I was going to have so much space. So between my home brewing stuff and like woodworking and all this other, I mean, I got enough hobbies for 8 guys.
You do.
It's ridiculous. So yeah, it's awesome.
That's cool. Yeah, no, kegging is I feel like I've spent enough money on on all the different parts and pieces and things that I'm using that I need to be able to go to my wife and say, look, here's what I want to do. I need to get this freezer thing, and I need to get like 5 or 6 kegs. I need to brew something that tastes good before I can kind of talk her into doing that.
Yeah, well, and ask around like family, because I ended up getting the fridge I use for free from my in-laws, because they had got a new fridge. They did their own one, and you don't have to use a chest freezer. You can use a regular old side-by-side fridge, or the whatever the standard fridge is called, and retrofit it, just drill some holes through the door, and you're in business.
All right, yeah, all right. Some DIY stuff is going to happen. I can
for
feel
sure,
it.
man.
I can
for
feel
sure.
it. All right, so you guys going to talk about brewing coffee now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
this is where my pee break comes in. I'll be back.
Yeah, fair enough. So Brooke and I were talking offline. We almost went overtime on our start because Brooke, you've got so many hobbies. I'm kind of the same way, but I need space because same thing. I'm been living in condo life. I've owned this is my second condo. I need a basement for a studio so I can obviously I'm outside right now. I need to be inside. But I've been roasting coffee almost as long as I've been smoking cigars now. And you were talking when we were offline. You were talking about the new Be More. You've got the digital wireless brewer, and we're talking a little bit about the digital wireless roaster.
Yeah. I've been using the Be More roaster for probably 4 years at this point, and it's obviously seen a lot of upgrades over that time period. It's gone from fully a very simple, very little control to a very in-depth control roaster. And now they've introduced, the app-controlled roaster, and now they've got the app-controlled, coffee brewer, and it's awesome. When you get into coffee, I know I personally became a pour-over snob for a long time, and I thought drip was just, drip coffee was, that's for plebeians. That's not for people who really like coffee. But I think that's because most drip machines you buy they don't control temperature properly, and they don't evenly extract the coffee. And there are a handful of good drip brewers out there, and when you got like company over and stuff, I mean, I'm brewing like 4 or 5 cups of pour over in the morning for guests, and I feel like a barista. I'm sitting there for an hour brewing coffee, where if you got a good quality drip machine, you could just do it all in one go. So yeah,
and I mean you hit on it. Like if you can get, and there are very few machines out there, really 3 that come to mind. Be More is one of them, the Techniform is the other,
and the Bonavita.
And that's really the 3 machines if you want to do drip and you want to control your temperature. And I'm kind of in a unique situation where, being in Calgary, the only other place that I can think of off the top of my head that has similar altitude issues is Colorado.
Yep.
And so, you talk about when you get into higher altitude, you run into issues with brew temperatures.
Lower boiling point.
Yeah, it's a lower boiling point. So, it's actually tough to dial in. You want to do an extraction at 202 degrees Fahrenheit. That's tough because some machines, they won't even get up to 175, 185 consistently. So, yeah, it's you were talking about Ethiopian coffee, and it's funny because, I've done, I still probably have 20 pounds of green coffee just sitting in a cabinet because, just trying different origins. And I keep coming back to Ethiopian because, within the Ethiopian profile, you can get something that's really fruity. You can get like the Sidmo. You can get into the, I always forget the name of it. There's Ethiopian coffee that's really spicy and earthy, and they've got tons of different profiles, but from this, roughly the same area, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, Ethiopia to me, I mean, really Africa in general, to me it's the best coffee in the world. I mean, Ethiopian Yurchef or, a lot of Kenyan coffees these days are outstanding. I mean, your South American and Central American coffees, they're really good, but I just love that kind of fruity complexity that you get out of a lot of the African stuff. And, for the most part, don't get that out of South America or Central America unless you're going for like a really high dollar, like a geisha from Guatemala or something like that, which you're spending 20-30 bucks a pound on that, where when I can get an Ethiopian for $5 or $6 a pound, it's hard to justify. So
Yeah. And I think what I really like, and I mean, I kind of bring it back to tobacco because, like, you can start with particular tobacco from a particular farm, and it's really preparation. So you talk about, like, let's say you get a single origin Ethiopian, and how you roast it, you can get so many different flavor profiles depending on how dark you roast it. Yeah.
And I mean, also the processing, whether you're doing a natural process or a washed coffee, I mean, it is so similar to tobacco. It's funny, I visited Stumptown's roastery in Oregon probably 3 or 4 years ago now, and I was talking to them, I was like, have you guys ever thought about doing any, partnership with cigar companies? And they kind of, were taken aback, but I was like, you guys realize that tobacco and coffee are extremely similar crops, I mean, terroir and growing regions and seed varietals, and it's the same as wine. It's like where the grape is grown has so much of an effect. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
I mean, we could do an entire show and have you on just on coffee. In fact, maybe that's a future potential show after the IPCPR.
Yeah, we should do that in the morning, though. I don't think an 8 o'clock show on coffee would be particularly conducive to my sleep schedule.
Well, we're pretty flexible in sharing our pairings because I run the show. We call the shots. So maybe we'll do a pre-record on a weekend after the IPCPR, and I'll get hopped up on caffeine. And instead of being slurring our words, we'll just be talking a mile a minute.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Yeah, no, I can talk coffee all day.
Can I just fire up the Keurig and play along?
No, don't even say that word. That's what we call sacrilege in the coffee industry.
You're like, no, bro, that's not an option. No, you should have. You should see if we could bring Catfish out of retirement to get in on a show like that.
That's right. He's a huge coffee, like he
likes the coffee.
Yeah, he's got, like, same as me, half his kitchen is taken up with coffee brewing equipment for sure.
Nice. Yeah, it's unfortunate because my wife does not drink coffee. She's a total tea person. So we have this huge section of our kitchen just dedicated to some form of tea or coffee brewing. It's kind of funny. We're totally segregated when it comes to our hot beverages of choice.
Yeah, I'm the same way. The girlfriend unfortunately had to go off of coffee because the caffeine was just too much for her. But my entire morning, like, as much as a shower and getting ready for work, half of that morning is really dedicated to coffee preparation.
Oh, yeah.
My day starts with a really great cup of coffee. So
totally. No, I seriously miss it. And I mean, it's kind of funny because I don't even really go to coffee shops that much anymore because I'm a lot of times so disappointed by the quality of cup that I get. When you're roasting stuff at home and it's 2 or 3 days old, I mean, it's hard to get much better than that as long as you know what you're doing. I mean, it's some really awesome stuff, and it's a lot easier than, especially with something like the Be-More. I mean, it's basically a big toaster oven. I mean, it's really not that hard. It's the learning curve is not that crazy. So.
Just another hobby to toss into our SigFed members if you want to,
another
get crazy.
Couple $100 worth of gear. Isn't that the best thing about hobbies is accumulating the gear? That's it's fun, man. It's a lot of fun.
All right, well, thanks very much, Brooke. We've kept you on for probably our second longest sharing our pairing show. We appreciate you being on. I know you're out there in the cold, and we appreciate it.
Yes, and I'm ready to pee, so this is a good breaking point.
Ditto. So I want to thank all our audience members who tuned in live and all our podcast members who are listening, and appreciate all your questions and tuning into our show every week. We'll be back next Wednesday. I don't even know what we've got going on next Wednesday because, we actually, do we have...
Am I at the ballpark next week? No, I'm not.
No, you're not. I think we've got Claudio next week. That's going to be a great show.
Macho. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be a fun show. We've booked up a record number of guests. I think the following week you're going to be at the ballpark. So speaking of tea, we're going to have Logan back from India. We're going to be doing a tea show. Rob will be at the ballpark. That'll be a good show. Thanks again, Johnny. Appreciate you being on the show. I'm sure we're going to have you on a future show because always a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
And as we say on sharing our pairings, make sure to drink better, but drink less.